there's an Indian of Sipper Yitzias Mitzrayim. Laman Tizgur is Yom Tzad Chmeir Mitzrayim is an Indian of Zechira. You just repeat what's already there. You just repeat it. And then there's an Indian of Sipper Yitzias Mitzrayim. It's kind of a story relating. You're relaying a story. And the Aguda says, "Afilik kaluni chachomim, kaluni levoinem, kaluni yel matotoyre bitzvon saper." It seems like you need to add something to the story. And as much as you add to the story, we can relate to history, to historical events, to existence as a whole in two major realms. One we will call Hashgacha Klulis, which means that God empowers the world by the laws of physics, by the laws of nature, kind of on autopilot, which means the world somehow knows what she needs to do on her own, although the main force of energy comes from God. But once God manifested creation somehow runs on autopilot, and God doesn't have to intervene in every step of the way in order for the trees to continue to grow, or so forth and so forth. And then we have Hashgacha Prutis. And Hashgacha Prutis can be understood in many ways. The regular Hashgacha Prutis means that God does intervene from time to time. When there's a special occasion, or for whatever reason, it's like an on and off switch, where he can leave it on Hashgacha Klulis, and then, but there's an even more radical way to understand Hashgacha Prutis, which is there isn't such a thing as Hashgacha Klulis. Nothing in existence could continue to exist if not for God injecting a new energy that was not here a second ago, just like the very first second of creation. And that is the power that keeps the world existence, the universe going for the next millisecond. Not only that, we say Hamchadash b'tivoy b'chol yom tov et mas bereshis. There's a chiddush. So we see things repeating itself in existence. The sun is shining every day. Strawberries continue to be strawberries, and so forth. But every second there's a chiddush, which means there is something new to the world that what did not exist before. And in a more radical way, we can understand that the fact that the tree continues to be a tree every second is for a different reason than the previous second. There's something new that has nothing to do with what existed in the world for the last 5,000 years or 13 billion years, whatever, that must be injected in creation that continues the sustenance and of the world. That realm of Ashgucha Prutis brings about a very bubbly history, a history that is alive, that broods, that people can relate to in spontaneous ways. There's this famous question, if God can create a stone that he himself will not be able to pick up. That is a stupid question. The real question should be, if God is perfect, if God is all omnipotent, does he have the trait of Hashluma? Can he still grow? Can he still be bigger than what he was before? And if the answer is no, does that mean that God is not perfect because he doesn't have that trait? We know that, according to science, the universe expands. Every second it expands. Which means that the universe of today, the universe of this second, is not the same universe as a second ago. But the question is, where did it expand it? Where did it expand it? Where? And what exactly was that? What exactly was the point of that expansion before it expanded? Because we are using the universe as the entire cosmos and everything as the figure of everything, as the Ein Sof. So if it can expand, it means there is still room to expand. If there is still room, that capability should be part of the universe even before it expands. What does it mean as it expands? And the answer is, there is a new Ein Sof. It's a very interesting concept because Ein Sof means Ein Sof. But when we say that something is Ein Sof, we don't have to take out a ruler and we measure Ein Sof. Ein Sof means that it continues to grow Ein Sof with Chedishim that the Ein Sof didn't have before. So in other words, the expansion of the universe is a creation. It's like a new creation that didn't exist before. So God is perfect, Mushlam. But a second after he is Mushlam, the Hashluma gets expanded because Ein Sof expands Ein Sof. Which means we as humans, when we create through free choice from a machshava, yesh ma'ayin, we actually expand on the Ein Sof chedishim that did not exist in the Ein Sof a second before. There's this question of Yediyah and Bechira. How could we have free choice if God knows everything, right? This famous question. But there are two kinds of ideas. There's ideas of yes or no. Will the sun shine tomorrow or not? And then there is ideas which didn't even exist before it came about. Which means before it came about, there was no such thing as knowing about it, because you can't know about something that it is not even in the Ein Sof of existence. And since the way we explained the expansion of the universe, and we extended this idea to everything that exists in a continuous phase, why not? Why can't we add attributes and data, information, if this information just was not in the realm of even the Ein Sof? It couldn't have been a idea about it, because if there's already a idea about it, it's already here. It's just like the question of where does the universe expand into? And if you have an answer to that, that means it's already there in some form, which means it's part of the universe. This expansion was already part of the universe before it expanded. But if the expansion is just a new creation that didn't even exist in the Ein Sof, because the Ein Sof is a bubbly Ein Sof that continues to create new things that the Ein Sof didn't have before, which is a contradiction, it's an oxymoron, but if it's Ein Sof, it's got to be Ein Sof all the way. Then there is not even shaykh to have a idea about it, because we don't expect God to have a idea about something that doesn't exist. And it's perfect, because everything is within the realm of the Ein Sof, with all the ideas that the Ein Sof includes, for the lack of a better word. And we understand that there is nothing wrong with a perfect God that doesn't have idea about something that is outside every realm of Ein Sof existence. When we relate to history in such a fashion, we become free. We become what the Pesach Seder expects us to be. We need to reinvent the story in our own image with chedishim that didn't even exist in the Ein Sof. There's an interesting concept in the Haggadah, which I heard lately, that sometimes you look through the Haggadah, you watch it, and you learn it, and something it doesn't add up. And I'm going to start with the very first passage. Hu lachmu anyu de achule besuna ba'arad Yisrael kol divchvin yaisa v'yaychvel kol ditzrich yaisa v'yifsech. Two different messages that has nothing to do with each other. That's the lachmu anyu, the bread, and kol divchvin yaisa v'yaychvel. Okay, it's fine. Invite people, but it has nothing to do with the lachmu anyu. And then hashatu huchol shunu habu ba'arad Yisrael, and it's even in Aramaic. So, in order to understand that, we need to add some context as to when and under what circumstances the Haggadah was written, and It's been said that it was written in the times of the rebellion of Bar Kokhba. And of course, in a time of a rebellion, when a great empire such as the Roman Empire is controlling over all aspects of life in Israel, you cannot express yourself the way you want. So Hu Lachmu Anu was probably a poster for the rebels to understand that there is something going on, something beneath the surface. There's a basement here, or some kind of dissident activity, and they called it Lachmu Anu. Lachmu Anu means the times of Gulas, that we are still under we're still subjugated by the Romans. That's why it's Hu Lachmu Anu, the Chulu Evasunu Ba'arab Yisrael, which means it's been around in the past. Kol Dechvin Yaisai V'Yaichel means whoever is hungry should come eat. Meaning, if you want to be involved, come in. Kol Detzrich Yaisai V'Yifsach is an insinuation. It's a cue that what we are trying to do is bring back the Korban Pesach. That's the focus of this rebellion. Shatu Huchel, Shenu Ba'arab Yisrael, seems like an innocent message, but right now it's a call for violence. It's a call to pick yourself up and do something physically in order to get the Romans out of our way. Why am I telling you that? Because we spoke about Sipper Yetzias Mitzrayim. Do you see how the Sipper has changed in so many ways by putting in the reality, the history of the people who wrote Hu Lachmu Anu that we didn't understand before? That is what we have to do. On the Lyle Seder, with the curiosity of the children asking questions, we need to reinvent ourselves. In our times, especially considering what's going on in the last 2-3 years in the world, we can look at it as events, we can look at it as biblical events, we can look at it as something that demands from us to reinterpret what we need to do in our times. In every generation, we need to reinvent the Sipper Yetzias Mitzrayim in the most astonishing ways, given what we just discussed on how the universe works, that you can actually add a piece to the Ein Sof with something that we don't even expect God to have an idea about, because it didn't even exist in any form, which means that God was perfect even without this idea. And to expand on that, we can ask, what is the connection between the United States and Israel, the Jewish people, the Jewish land? If we dig a little bit in the history of how the United States came into being, famous story of the Mayflower sailors. Those were persecuted Puritans, which was a form of Protestant Christianity. They saw themselves as persecuted from the English church. And they were pretty much obsessed with mania. The Old Testament, especially the biblical narratives of Nevi'im and Ksivim. They saw these narratives as something that rewrites itself in every generation. They saw the Mayflower voyage as the Exodus out of Egypt, and they saw New England as New Canaan. There is actually in Connecticut a town it's called New Canaan, Connecticut, based on the Plymouth community that the Mayflower sailors created in Massachusetts, Connecticut area. And even our founding fathers were very much inspired by those who were spontaneously against the authority of the church, the authority of the monarch. And that is how they had the power, the courage, the strength, and the vision to create something. The revolutionists against the mighty British Empire, because they believed in history in the way we just spoke about it, the bubbly history, that a few revolutionists can overpower any power if there's a will. And in a certain sense, the awakening of the Jewish people in the late 19th century was by inspiration of what happened in the United States. It was like the Terach that went to Canaan before Avram did, in order to make the fields, the way, the passage a little bit easier, because it already happened once. And in today's days, when we have this identity crisis, where people, progressives, we call them the woke, liberal, leftists, who question themselves, why are we Americans? Why is America a great country? That is because you can create your new history by the past or by the future. The United States were just a group of immigrants who had no past. So what is the attribute that united the people to want to create a country, to live together, to fight together, to suffer together, and to win together? The American dream. The belief that America is going to be better than any other country. We will do it better. But what is the dream about? money. They understood that the church should be outside. When they said religion should be outside of the state, they meant the church. But God must stay. The universal Abrahamic God, not Jesus, not any other institutionalized religion, but God. And that's why on the dollar is minted, "In God we trust." However, when those dreams, when the American dream is squashed, people have no reason why to be together as a country, because the United States is not an ethnicity, it's just a nationality. That is where the Jewish people come in. The Jewish people who have a history and a future. We think that the Jewish state was created because the Jews suffered in Eastern Europe, the Holocaust, and the way Herzl understood Zionism. But nobody's going to tell you that a country, a people, will be ready to fight, to sacrifice themselves, their children, to live in horrific circumstances, just because they share a certain history. That is not what the Jewish state represents. The Jewish state definitely represents something that gives humanity, if not the Jewish people themselves, hope for the future. The Jews are the most innovative people of all peoples. Israel is one of the happiest countries on the face of the earth, and it's very easy to be happy in Switzerland for obvious reasons. But when your country is under missile barrages every second day or every second hour, and you have cornucopia of wars since its inception, every few years another existential threat. And among all that's going on, you are still able to create the greatest economy in the Middle East. Agriculture and whatnot. And the people in that country are still happy. And there's one more indication that this is a healthy society. The only Western society that has sustainable birth rates, which replaces humanity and doesn't diminish humanity. Any other Western country is at a birth rate that diminishes its society. It's less than 2.1. Nobody's forcing anyone to have children. Nobody's forcing anyone to have children. It's a choice. And the choice is rooted in how you see the world. How you believe that the world is a place where you can rewrite history, that you can reinvent creation, that you can add. If you understand that, you would want to create, to procreate, to have a future, to have this future for the next generation to continue this endeavor, to understand that the world is geared towards a place that is only going to get better and better and better, even with the bumps on the road. Because the universe expands, and our Bechira expands, and our capability and ability to interpret history is on a level that we can add to something that doesn't even need to have a idea of God before. This is something so marvelous that you will want to have a biological child to be part of this. So Chayres, freedom, real freedom, is to understand Chol Doir V'Dor Chai V'Miris Esatz V'Keli Yutz V'Mitzrayim.